In case you don't know, we use Anchor to distribute our podcast. We love it because it's free, there are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and more. There's no minimum listenership to start earning money, if that's a goal for your podcast. And everything you need to make a podcast is in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started creating your own podcast. Hi, this is Cheyenne.
And this is Rachel.
Welcome to What the Finance.
We're so glad you're here.
So this week, we are talking about pets.
Yeah.
Which kind of seems like it wouldn't necessarily be something that belongs on a finance podcast, but oh boy, does it.
It really does. It really does. And I think the reason that it doesn't seem like something that belongs in a finance podcast is 100% the reason that it belongs on a finance podcast.
Exactly. Yeah.
People get pets because they're wonderful to have and they're cute, and they can be emotionally fulfilling. But the other side of that is that they can also super stress you out if you don't have money to take care of them properly and you didn't think about the finances of having a pet in your life. So Cheyenne, did you have pets growing up?
I did. So we had 4 dogs as I was growing up, and a couple of cats. And my parents have always had, not always. So we went a stretch where we didn't have pets, but then we've had them now for a few years. And then as an adult, I've had a cat and a couple of dogs. And we are currently planning for our next pup. So stay tuned on that.
Awesome.
What about you?
So I had some small pets growing up. Now I grew up mostly in like apartments, like as a young kid. And so dogs are usually like, But I did have some fish to disastrous effect. Poor fish.
Actually, so I have, I know some people who are trying to set up an aquarium right now and are like, they've put time and research into it. And it's like, it's a really, first of all, fish are significantly more expensive than I would have ever thought, to be honest. And also, they're very finicky.
Right.
Which I guess makes sense. I mean, but also, like, I don't think I would have originally had that like realization had I not known some people who were like doing the fish thing.
Hardcore researching into getting fish.
Yeah.
That's fair. It's very fair. But yeah, we did also get a cat when I was a kid, because like many children, including mine, as a matter of fact, I don't want to say me and my siblings. I am actually terrified of dogs.
Oh.
And I'm more like as a general rule, and then I like dogs on like a case-by-case basis if I get. My siblings all begged for a dog for years and years and years and years, and finally my mom said, no, we're not getting a dog, but fine, we can get a cat. Was also not a super positive experience for me as a child. Of course, declawing cats is extremely inhumane. So my parents didn't do it, but our cat really liked my hair more than anybody else's. So that didn't go real well for me. And now as an adult, I've also had several pets. Most recently a hamster, and she is great fun. Although we recently, and we'll talk about cats here in a second instead of randomly rambling about our pet histories, but it turns out that those starter cages that you get for rodents, just at like any old pet store, are actually not big enough for like a standard sized hamster. And so we recently bought what does have enough space for her at a minimum is a 40-gallon aquarium. So that's what she's in now. And we haven't seen her for a while because she's having a great time burrowing in this tank that is, or, you know, in her habitat that is big enough for her. But that makes me happy.
Yeah.
Our little Blanky is living her best life, burrowing away.
Good for her. Good for her. So has she stopped trying to escape now?
Yeah.
That's, perfect.
Yeah, I don't think that we don't have things like stacked tall in the aquarium, so she can't even reach the roof, and that helps.
Yeah, that's smart.
But yeah, so that's also been a bonus.
Yeah, makes sense.
But yeah, as a cost piece, it turns out that a 40-gallon aquarium and a stand to put it on that's sturdy enough for a 40-gallon aquarium full of stuff. It doesn't come cheap.
I would believe that.
So, like, I bought ours used off of Facebook. Then the combo was still $150.
Dang.
Yeah. But new, that set would have been like $500. So I feel really good about this. I feel good about what I paid, but it still wasn't exactly chump change.
Yeah.
You know?
That's the thing. Like, I think that, like, I don't think that people realize how expensive pets are until they are adults and have to pay for one.
Right.
Because, like, we had a cat, and cats are relatively low maintenance. Like, that's like one of their perks is that they're pretty low maintenance, except that he also, like, he was kind of an expensive little dude.
Right.
And our dog too, he was pretty, towards the end of their life, their end of life care can get very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
If they age, they get spendy. It's worth it. It's totally worth it.
Right. Definitely.
We wouldn't do it if it wasn't, but it's also something to make note of and plan for. Like, with our next pet, like, we'll set up a sinking fund so that any vet visits are paid for out of that, and then when they don't go, it just kind of
stacks up,
and we'll use it towards that end of life stuff that just starts to come up because it gets spendy.
Right. It really does. And I think even not the end of life stuff, right? Like, just bringing your pets into the vet for, like, their regular like annual checkups or whatever. Yeah, that's not cheap.
No. No, it's definitely not. And I know that there are companies that provide pet insurance. I have never done any research into them, so I don't know how worth it that would be. But I should probably do that. I should have probably done that before this episode, now that I think of it. But
so I did do a little bit ahead of the episode. And basically what I gathered is that it's a whole lot like human insurance, like your own regular health insurance. So if you're familiar with your health insurance or your employer or whatever, you're probably also at least have a reasonably good handle on the nuts and bolts of pet insurance. Now, we do have a Pinterest board, as we do for many of our episodes, that has resources for, and one thing that's in there to help our listeners out is just a comparison board of different types of pet insurance that you can get. Because, again, much the same as human health insurance, there's different deductibles and co-pays if you have multiple pets on the same policy, similar to like a family plan versus a single plan.
Who knew?
Yeah. So I do appreciate that, at least, that the companies out there that are providing health insurance for our pets were at least decent enough to structure it in a way that wasn't completely unfamiliar to the people that are shopping for it.
Right.
Like, you could kind of understand the basic rules behind the whole thing. And then based on the type of pet you have, it can also get to be, that influences the cost of everything, including your pet health insurance, right? Like, if you have a more exotic pet, like a snake, right? Sorry for our listeners. Cheyenne is making a face, her I hate snakes face.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will say it every time. Snakes they're not pets. They're not cuddling you. They're trying to decide if they can eat you. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're not, I don't like them.
I don't, my 10th grade biology teacher had a snake in his classroom, a live snake. Her name was Ruby. That was also my favorite class in high school, though. So, well, I'm like 90% with you, but then I've got that 10%. Like, I love the teacher, I love the class, and Ruby was just kind of like part of the package deal. 10th grade biology in my high school. So it was a bit of a mix.
There's no percentage of me that likes snakes. I'm genuinely terrified of them. And like, I would say that it's probably, I think it would qualify as a straight up phobia, how much I dislike them. They're not pleasant. I feel the same way about frogs and toads and stuff too.
Birds are that animal for me.
Yep.
It turns out that many types of birds are the types of pets that people will get as, like little hatchlings because they're adorable.
Mm-hmm.
But then they grow up a little bit and you realize that this is a terrible pet. Like geese, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Goslings are adorable. You get like a teenage goose. Yeah, no, they'll kill you. So
yeah.
And you don't want a pet like that. And so then people let them go and then wreck the habitat and give toddler Rachel a lifelong phobia of waterfowl.
I'm not a huge fan of birds either. Like, I like them at a distance. They're pretty.
Right.
But I don't necessarily want them near me. And I feel the same way about spiders. I have a healthy relationship with spiders. Like, I don't want it near my person. But if I come across one, it's not that big of a deal. Like, we'll just kind of look at each other, have the conversation of like, okay, that's your space. This is my space.
Right.
We're cool.
Mm-hmm.
But also in the summer, if I find them in my house, I let them outside.
That's very decent of you.
Spiders, not birds. I've yet to find there was a bat in my apartment one time. Which we also captured and let outside. So, okay, first of all, I shouldn't say we. It was all Bridget. Second of all, I think she just directed it outside. I don't think it was like captured it anyway. I think it was shoved outside.
Well, I think that's what you're supposed to do, right? Like turn off all the lights in your house except for...
I was mostly focused on staying out of the way so that it didn't get in my hair.
It's a good call.
I don't know that that's ever actually happened to anybody. I think it's just like the fear.
One thing that I found when I was preparing for this episode that I thought was super interesting was an infographic put together by Experian, which is also pinned on our Pinterest board. It really breaks down like the lifetime costs of what you can expect with different types of pets, but it also talks about like what types of pets are most common in certain professions. And I thought that was kind of cool.
That is very cool.
Like, and this was a divide that I thought personally was super weird. So nurses are more likely to have dogs, but doctors more likely to have cats. So it's not like medical are dog people. Like it, no, I didn't know. I just thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. What was it for teachers? Does it say?
Also dogs.
Dogs, that makes sense.
Here's the funny thing, based on our conversation earlier about fish, people who work in finance are more likely to have them. Yeah.
Funny.
And other low maintenance pets.
Yeah, that's...
And yeah, just, I don't know. Personally, I really struggle with that characterization of low maintenance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
I really do think that it's just a reflection of how much you value the life of that animal.
I think sometimes, yeah.
I mean, consciously or not, right? Like you might just buy into the narrative that that a fish is low maintenance without realizing that actually they're not that low maintenance.
Yeah.
And so you're not consciously going, oh, I don't value the life of this fish. You're just unconsciously buying into like the social narrative.
I feel like this is one of those things that we could go into a very long conversation about, because I also think like there is a difference how much attention a fish requires as opposed to how much attention a dog or a hamster requires. You know, like,
True.
So there are those. So I do think that like there is that piece of it, I guess.
That's very true. Low maintenance doesn't mean no maintenance.
True. Right. Yeah, exactly. As we stated at the beginning, we're saying, you know, it wouldn't seem like pets would be a thing that a finance podcast would talk about. However, it does play into, we'd already talked about how their care can be very expensive over the lifetime, and especially towards the end of their life, but also at the beginning of their lives when they're puppies or kittens,
Right,
they go in a lot.
Nuts.
Yeah, they go in a lot, and they grow out of things really quickly. Like they grow out of toys because they're smart. They also have razors inside of their mouths, and so they destroy them very quickly.
Yes.
So plan for that. And
much
food.
Like human children, you might buy a toy that you think is the shit, and then your pet kind of goes, nah.
I'm gonna play with the box instead.
Yeah. You've got to mentally prepare yourself for that as well.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, food. I didn't mean to interrupt, and I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's totally fine, because that was a really good point. The nice thing about pets, and I don't have experience with children, but pets at least, if they have that reaction right away, if you give it to them like a week later, they'll probably go bananas for it, because they're constantly growing, and they constantly need different types of stimulation to keep them engaged. And you can definitely find low-cost alternatives to buying like fancy, expensive toys to keep them entertained. I mean, like seriously, boxes will do it if you just change up like how you let them interact with it. It's definitely like, it's very, very possible to do at low cost, but I wouldn't say that there's any no cost way to entertain them. I think that eventually there's going to be a little bit involved there when it comes to like the brain engagement aspect of things. Cats, dogs are kind of what I'm talking about, because those are the two that I have experience with, but they definitely need stuff to keep them busy. Otherwise they get naughty. They get very naughty.
Yes, they do.
Which is great for TikTok. Not so much when it's in your own house.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. But food is another thing. Just like people and kids, pets have very different tastes, and not every puppy is going to like every food. And just because they liked it 4 hours ago doesn't mean they're going to like it at their next meal. They may have already changed their taste by then. So be prepared for that, and be prepared to donate some food to your family members or friends that have animals. And if you don't have any of those, donate it to the shelter, because you will definitely come across stuff that your animal's like, nah, I'm not eating that. Much like people, they need to eat every day, unless you have, some sort of reptile or amphibian. And I am under the impression that that's not necessarily the case, but I don't know for sure. But making sure that you're budgeting
a few months.
Yeah.
For those, but still food. Yeah. But I would say, much like people, sometimes your pets need to eat something that is going to be good for them, but they're not gonna like it. And so that's an extra challenge as well. When it comes to food, is just making sure that they're getting the nutrition that they need, even if you have to use some coercion techniques to get them to eat the food.
Definitely. And I have found Pinterest to be an incredibly useful tool when it comes to finding creative ways to get puppies specifically to get enough food in them because puppies need a lot of calories. They're burning a lot of calories because they're growing a body, and that takes a ton of energy. So they need a lot of calories, this is a whole other tangent of mine, but I feel like society has this expectation that children and puppies and kittens should only eat like, a couple times a day. Like no, they eat a lot because they're burning a lot of calories, but you also have to make sure that what you're giving them is sustaining that. So just planning accordingly and making sure that you put in the research so that you know how much your animal needs to eat.
Right. And I would guess that much I haven't really had this type of pet as an adult, but I would guess that much like human children, they also have very small stomachs.
Mm-hmm.
So you might feel like they're eating a lot or they're eating all the time. But if you've got a small stomach, well, then yeah, the fully grown person and the life of that being is going to feel like they're eating a ton when really they eat like 1 or 2 mouthfuls and then they are packed full.
Right.
For like an hour and then they're starving again.
Right. And something with is that because they are animals, they don't always recognize that they're full because their instinct is to eat food when it's available.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of have to regulate that for them, and it can be hard to remember, especially when they're little.
Yes.
But there we went on. I told you it was going to be a tangent, but just making sure that you are planning for the amount of food that they're going to eat at the beginning of their lives, because it is pretty significant. It gets better as they get older because it's easier to plan for consistently how much they're going to eat. When you first get them, it's hard because you don't know. You learn as you go. But once you figure it out and you get into a good routine, that's much easier. But just making sure to have something budgeted, and then once you figure it out, go from there.
Mm-hmm.
And also, please don't make your pet be a vegetarian.
Yeah, no.
Might be a part we might want to cut out, but oh man, sorry. It just kind of came up in my world again semi-recently on, I think it was like TikTok or something like that. And I was like, don't do that. Don't do that.
No, or people who like make their cats be vegan. Like,
right.
No, you are an idiot. You are an idiot.
You're killing your cat is what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely probably going to want to take that part out.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Oh.
So one other like little tangent that I wanted to go on that is a planned one is actually talking about pets and homelessness. We've just spent a bunch of time talking about how if you're going to get a pet, you should plan for it, and you should have a plan for how you're going to pay for your pet and care for your pet. But homelessness is a thing that happens.
Mm-hmm.
In the United States, it happens to a lot of people because we don't have really any good social safety nets to keep people from getting kicked out of their homes if they fall on hard times. I don't know, in my world, I've seen a lot of judging of homeless folks who who are living on the street and have dogs. And I just want to say, don't be that person. First of all, it just makes you a dick. But also, in a situation that can be extremely isolating and dangerous because people are jerks, having a pet like a dog when you're homeless can make things seem a little bit more normal and remind you maybe what you want to work back towards. And also help to keep you safe.
Yep.
So if you, rather than judging, if you want to help those folks and their pets, there are organizations that do exactly that. And many of them are nonprofits. And we have those pinned on the board itself is actually called The Natural World, because we have another wildlife episode coming up that we're really excited about. And it made sense to me to lump them together. But so those organizations that are nonprofits, if you choose to donate to them to help that group of people, that donation is tax deductible. So that's a good thing for you to think about if you want to help folks who have pets whose plans fell through. That's a good thing for you to do.
Yeah. I think those are all really, really great points to mention. But yeah, definitely, if you are at a place where you don't have the time to commit to having a pet, that might be a really good option. Or volunteering at a local shelter. I don't think that there is ever an instance in which shelters are not looking for volunteers. They're pretty much willing, I think, to accept any help that they can get. If you don't have the time to commit to that, much like not having the time to commit to having a pet, but you want to help, ask your local shelter what supplies they need. Oftentimes they do have lists that either go out on social media accounts or just to local stores where you can buy supplies that they need and donate that towards or directly to them. I know ours where I'm at to do that. I would assume that that's a pretty universal thing.
I've seen that as well. We do live in the same state, but
We do.
200 miles apart from each other. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I think just my own thoughts wrapping up. If you're thinking about getting a pet, do your research, make a plan, both a financial plan, but also kind of just a personal life plan. Right? Like, do you actually, if you want to get a dog, do you actually have the time and the energy and the 24 hours that are allocated to you to give that dog adequate attention? And then if you don't, right, if you're falling short in one of those things, don't just decide it's going to be fine and get the pet anyway. You can donate to a nonprofit. You can donate your time, to like a local humane society or some other shelter that in your community, so that when you do actually get a pet, the pet is enriching your life, but you are also enriching that pet's life.
Yep, absolutely. I agree. My ending thoughts, one thing that we didn't mention and I had forgot to write down before, not only when we talked about a lot of things that you may not think of that come with the cost of having a pet, specifically dogs, training, making sure that you're planning for the cost of training. It's an expensive piece, but it's very necessary for both your sanity and your pets.
Yes.
Training is so great, and there are so many options. I know that there are online options, especially this year. We've seen a lot of trainers come out with online training availability. But making sure that you have some sort of plan in place for that, because it makes everybody's life so much better, and making sure that you have the time and the money to put into that is super important.
It really is. Thank you for listening to this episode of What the Finance. You can subscribe everywhere you get your podcast so you never miss an episode.
You can also email us at what_the_finance@protonmail.com. Visit us on Facebook at What the Finance. Follow us on Instagram at What the Finance. Check us out on Pinterest at What the Finance, or tweet us at finance_what.